Good morning. Good morning. I know you all want to buy books, but if you can just stop for a few minutes and we'll listen to Luis. Really happy to welcome you to our Rector's Forum this morning. If you're new or you're visiting with us, and I see some visitors, would like to suggest that you stop at our red welcome table on the lawn and pick up a red welcome bag, which is full of information about All Saints Church. We also have green sign-up sheets on the table over there where if you'd like to receive a weekly email from us about what we're doing here in the forum, we would love to be able to send that to you. And we would not be able to offer the kind of enlightening and important speakers that we have this morning without your generous financial support. So if you're enriched by what you hear today and feel moved to make a pledge to All Saints Church, you can do that at the welcome table as well. I'm so excited to have Luis here this morning. I was just telling him his forum several years ago is probably my favorite forum of all time. It's not surprising that a master of language has given me the language I use to describe my own spiritual journey. When the staff does their spiritual autobiographies of the new member class, and when I wrote mine, I found myself quoting Luis left and right. He uses a phrase, the godless path to mystery, which explains everything that happened in my life for the first 50 years. And his teaching on the Mayan phrase, in Lakesh, you are the other me, has become my creed. I'm so thrilled that he's back with us this morning. Luis is the Poet Laureate of Los Angeles. He was appointed by Mayor, yes, applaud that. He was appointed by Mayor Eric Garcetti in 2014. He has 15 books of poetry, children's literature, fiction, and nonfiction, all of which you can buy over here, including the best-selling memoir, Always Running, La Vida Loca, Gang Days in Los Angeles. His last memoir, It Calls You Back, An Odyssey Through Love, Addiction, Revolutions, and Healing, was a finalist for the 2012 National Book Critics Circle Award. He has 40 years of working with gangs, youth, and the most troubled communities throughout the United States, Mexico, Central and South America, Europe, and Japan. He is the founding editor of Tia Chucha Press, which publishes culturally rich and socially engaged literature, and a lot of the books over there were published by that press, and co-founder of Tia Chucha's Cultural Center and Bookstore in Northeast San Fernando Valley, definitely worth visiting. It is a great place to stop, say hello, buy books, learn how they're creating healthy community through coffee and books and an art gallery, performance space, and arts workshop center. So I'll just give you a quick run through of some of the books over there. These are all poetry books of Luis's. They're amazing and marvelous, and they're all available over there. This is the classic, Always Running. You definitely need a copy of that. And the follow-up, It Calls You Back, another memoir. Hearts and Hands, which is about Luis's work, and I think a lot of what he's going to talk about this morning, a great book to have. And then this gem, Coiled Serpent, which is an anthology of Los Angeles poetry. It is amazing, and you're definitely going to want a copy for yourself and a copy for any grads in your life and maybe any dads in your life, but you need to do some shopping over there. Stop and visit the nice people. The latest book is Borrowed Bones with a preface by Martin Espada and published by Northwestern University. Wonderful. I just read several of them and they're so moving. This semester, Luis has served as scholar in residence at Cal State Northridge. There is so much to love about living in Los Angeles, and if you read Coiled Serpent, it'll remind you of all the things you love. And our speaker this morning is at the very top of that list. Please help me welcome Luis Rodriguez.
Wow. Good morning, everybody. It's so good to be back. I always have something to say, some of which will probably repeat what I said last time. But to me, it's really important to move our hearts and our thoughts wherever possible, and that's what I try to do. I tell people that it's not about me telling people what I think should be done, but more like moving the imagination about what's happening. And I want to start by saying that I've been Poet Laureate. It actually ends in October, which is kind of sad. It has gone by so fast. And the mayor was very kind enough to select me, but they didn't really know what a Poet Laureate was, to be honest with you. And so I kind of had to make my way, and they told me like I had to do a minimum of 6 events. So last year I did 110 events. And and they asked me to whatever I wanted, so I kind of made it. And one of the things was creating this beautiful anthology because I thought I wanted to leave something for the after I'm gone, as far as poet laureate, not after I'm gone from the earth, but and and I thought this would be important. Why not honor the voices that are very beautifully diverse and wonderful in our LA area? LA's got a great poetry scene. The whole area is full of poets from different languages, different communities, and we wanted to honor that. Now, we couldn't do the other languages, unfortunately. It's an English language anthology, but we have people from Iran, people from China, from Korea, from Mexico, from El Salvador, from US, from the Midwest, from New York, who now transplanted in this area, and they're all ages from teenagers to 80s, and all diversities as far as ethnicities and all kinds of beautiful stuff. So the one thing you'll find is that it's got so much diversity, but one thing you'll realize when you read this book, if you know anything about poetry, it's an LA book. Nobody else, no other city could have come out with a book like this. There's a lot of traffic motifs, a lot of earthquake motifs, wildfires, there's a lot of that. But this is a unique area, and it's very beautiful. And I actually am willing to say now, even though I've been to New York and I've been to San Francisco and I spent 15 years in Chicago, I'm willing to say that LA is probably the most poetic city in the country. And I really think that's true. But so beyond that, I still do a lot of work with the most troubled young people, as you know. And part of my work with the Poet Laureate is that I would go to the most troubled schools. I was just at Roosevelt High School this past week in Boyle Heights. Wonderful, wonderful kids, 400 of them lined up. The principal, who is just a new principal, is an English teacher, so that's really great when they're English teachers. He bought 250 books of Always Running for all the kids. So it was really great. I was signing books for an hour, it was so wonderful. And the teacher that brought me in told me that none of these kids love to read. He says, I had a classroom, nobody read books, but my book was the only first book. And it's opening the door to other books. That's the idea. And so I'm really glad to do that. I will be going to juvenile hall, and I will be teaching at Lancaster Prison again. I've done that before. As you know, I go to prisons. I've been doing that for more than 35 years, and I'm glad to be back at Lancaster. These are people that need to be addressed, talked to, and honored. I don't want to neglect the people that other people want to neglect. I am working with the Homeless Writers Coalition. I know there's a Homeless Writers Coalition. Yes, there is. There's a group of homeless people. I used to work with them in the 80s, and now they resurrected themselves to do a writing among homeless, so I'm going to try to work with them. I feel these are very important communities, and communities who are really made because of the problems we're having in our economy and in our structural issues, which I think are important. Unlike a lot of people, I know there's more homelessness wherever you see in LA. They're everywhere, encampments everywhere, but people are not connecting the dots. They're not just people mentally ill. They're not just people with drug problems. They're people who've been pushed out of their homes. This city area communities have been very bad about trying to displace people, and yet we don't make the connection. Highland Park, beautiful community. I was just talking to my friend about how beautiful it is, but there's a lot of gentrification and displacement. It's going on in Westlake and Pico Union, which I did a lot of work in. It's going on, of course, Echo Park. I lived in Echo Park, and I see a lot of that. The funny thing about Echo Park is that it's got a lot of art galleries now, and people don't know that in the late 1970s, I helped start the first art gallery. They wouldn't know that. I walked into an art gallery, and I felt like saying something, but I wasn't going to say anything. But when we started it, it wasn't to get rid of anybody. It was an art gallery of Chicano artists connecting with the gay community, because here's one thing that people weren't aware. When the gay community started to spread closer to Echo Park from Silver Lake and other areas, a lot of the Chicano gang members were stabbing them, robbing them. So what we decided to do was to create a center that could bring them both together. You know what I'm saying? And it was beautiful, but we couldn't afford the rents. And about 2 years later, it's dead. It's really sad. It's like we need those kind of things. The gentrification going on isn't really about that. It's really about displacing people and having people with some money come in and make it their community. So I'm very concerned about it. My old neighborhood where I grew up, where Always Running is based in, South San Gabriel used to be the poorest neighborhood in LA County up to the mid-'80s. Now it's almost completely gentrified. And you got mansions and townhouses where there used to be dirt roads and no sidewalks and goats and chickens in people's backyards. People don't know that the San Gabriel Valley wasn't just suburban. There was little migrant communities in Omani, in Pico Rivera, and La Puente, and South San Gabriel, other places where migrant workers had come in, and they were living in the poorest conditions in the county, and they were good families, strong families. Yes, there was gangs. I know I got involved with it, but it was mainly people who worked hard, and they were all pushed out. You understand what I'm saying? And most of them have been pushed further east. LA, for example, has lost, I'm not sure the exact statistic, but it has lost a large number of African-American population. Somebody told me close to 20% of the African-American population has been pushed out. That's a large number. Most of them are in Lancaster, they're in Palmdale, they're in Riverside. They're being pushed out. And this is, to me, a big problem, which is contributing to this homelessness, which is completely out of hand. And I also feel that the answer, even though I'm all for homeless solutions that can give homes immediately shelter, help with mental issues, whatever they might need, drug issues, the issue is deeper. You understand what I'm saying? They're not getting to the roots of it. There's a possibility in our world and in our country to make homes for everybody, and we can't seem to get that, because it's too much based on rents and who's paying, and we went through a big mortgage crisis, and we still haven't quite figured out what happened. Homes, to me, should not be left up to people who can just afford them. You understand what I'm saying? We need to have a situation where food, shelter, and clothing should be available for everybody who needs it. That's what I truly believe, and I think we should fight for that, you know. I was kind of concerned because I listened to all these pundits on these Face the Nation and everything, and I realized, you know what, they're very narrow thinking, all these people. Not that some of them don't have good ideas, but they don't really know what they're talking about, you know. And yet, where are the diverse voices? And I don't even care if they're diverse white voices. They don't even have diverse white voices. But forget that there's no African Americans, Native peoples, or Chicanos or other people speaking. It's like, why don't we have a diversity in ideas? The voices are either right-wing or liberal. It's like that's the only way we think. This country is very diverse. People have a lot of spectrum. I know very conservative people who have very good ideas. You know what I'm saying? And of course, I know a lot of liberals who have good ideas. But the point is, we don't know how to speak to each other anymore. The conversation is not inviting. We're not bringing people into a larger conversation. We're cutting people off. And unfortunately, the presidential nomination process is too much walls, too much division, too much people like third grade fighting in the yard kind of thing. And it's really a shame that we gotten to this point in this country where people would do that. I don't feel very happy about what's going on. But we still need to fight for those dignified voices with some integrity, with good ideas. There was a pundit this morning that I briefly heard who said, I don't like Bernie Sanders. He's a socialist. Socialism isn't going to work in this country. He's all this nonsense. And then he says, we need a free market world. And I'm like, dude, we haven't had a free market world more than 100 years. There's not been free markets for ages. What are you talking about? And socialism, what is he talking about? We've had socialism in this country a long time. People don't know that. Don't you know that if we wouldn't have had Medicare, we wouldn't have had Social Security, we wouldn't have had the 8-hour day, we wouldn't have had all these things that people take for granted if it wasn't for those revolutionary, far-thinking activists out there in those communities marching, some people killed to make sure we had these benefits. We've had socialism too. You know what I'm saying? It's not a foreign thing, not a foreign idea. It's part of who we are as America, and yet people keep trying to do this. So I find that we're starving for these great, beautiful ideas. And I think that especially I find very weird how they've misrepresented Christianity. I really think it's a big problem. Christianity is more diverse, has more voices, has more ideas in it than what they push. They keep pushing the most narrow ideas. And I think that unfortunately, like all religions, Christianity has been infiltrated. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people who are Christians are wonderful, amazing people. My whole family's Christians. I love them dearly. Christians to me are, it's just the fabric of this country. I told people that if you want to have a revolutionary in this country, you better make sure that Christians are at the heart of it. You cannot have it any other way. But here's the problem. The conservative right-wing politics has infiltrated Christianity. There are Christians who think Jesus Christ is a Republican. It's like, come on. Don't give me that. He's neither Democrat or Republican, but they keep put him in a box. You know, I have a poem about this. How they have God now, like at Walmart with a gun, standing by the border or something. You know, it's like, come on. We have to be expansive in our thinking. We have to be able to see that, well, if we have a God that encompasses everybody and everything, accepts LGBT community just like accepts black and brown, accepts undocumented, you know what I mean, the way the earth accepts us. Isn't it true that when you walk in this earth, the earth does not judge you? The earth doesn't say, did you go to prison? Did you make a mistake? Are you undocumented? Are you LGBT? The earth welcomes everybody. You understand? Our foot can walk on any part of this earth and is welcoming. That's the way our governance should be. You understand? That's the way our politics should be. We should align to these ideas that say everybody can be welcomed and everybody can be given the help they need so they can get on their own 2 feet and make it themselves. Isn't that the right way to do things? And that's what I think we have to really put out there. And I'm speaking as an American. I'm speaking as somebody who grew up in this country. Yes, I'm Chicano. Yes, I have indigenous spirituality. That's where my spirituality is. But it doesn't go against anybody else's. We do sweat lodge ceremonies. Me and my wife, by the way, my wife Trini is back there. I have to mention her because she makes the achuchas happen. And Mike Centeno is our development director. They are the team that makes the achuchas what it is today. But, you know, we do this indigenous spiritual practices with people because it's very basic. It's very just essential things. You know what I'm saying? I have a Navajo elder that says, you know, when you do the sweat lodge, there's a lot of things you got to do around it. You know, there's altars you got to put up, there's things. But he always makes the point, but that's all periphery. At the heart of the sweat lodge, just like the heart of any church, is your heart. That's what you got to be there with. Go with your heart. All that other stuff is fine. It's okay. I grew up as a Catholic, and there's all the liturgy. There's a lot of things you have to stand up, sit down. There's a lot of beautiful things. But the thing is, it's all nice, but that's not really it. What's really it is being there with your heart open and being able to accept the spirit that I think that God really represents. You understand what I'm saying? And I don't mind doing a sermon here in front of you. I know it's not sermon time, but I do think that I feel very strongly that we need an expansive spirituality because it's going to allow us to have an expansive economy and an expansive politics. You understand what I'm saying? That if we narrow our spirituality, so will our economy and so will our politics. I think spirituality is so key that you have to nurture it, take care of it, make sure it really is bigger than what we think it is. You know what I mean? Instead of making it a small little walking place that people have to go through and then barely anybody can fit in. You know what I'm saying? I always got the idea that when everybody had like in school, it was always like a shiv of who you can throw out, not who you can keep. And I think we have to have the idea that everybody can make it in their own way. You got to touch everybody differently. You know what I'm saying? I was put down as a kid because I was a very creative, sensitive kid. Now, what happens when you're a sensitive, creative kid in the barrio? A barrio that has patriarchy, power in relationships, cops chasing you everywhere you go, and your parents trying to make a living. You're in bad shape if you're a sensitive kid. I mean, I would tell you a funny story now. It wasn't funny then. When I was 9 years old, I got jumped by the kids. I was bullied all the time. I got jumped, and they actually fractured my jaw. I didn't break it. It just got like a little fracture. I never got it fixed, so my jaw got really crooked. And to this day, I only have 3 places where my teeth meet. I have to eat slow because I can't, I never got it fixed. And right now, I got big, so you don't see it. But when I was a little kid, I was skinny. And you could see this big jaw. So everybody made fun of me. Oh, my God. The girls called me monkey. I didn't have any friends. But I'm going to tell you what led to that. This is the funny thing. When I was small, I loved to play in my head. I was a very sensitive kid. I had a lot of imagination. I loved playing with my trucks. I loved playing with my army men. But I used to play dolls with my sisters. I didn't think twice about it. So by 9 years old, my neighbor's next door on the porch playing with dolls, and she invites me over to play. Boy, what a mistake that was. I went over to play dolls with her. I didn't think twice about it. 2 little homies were walking by, and they saw me. Oh, man. They told everybody. The next day I went to school. Everybody made fun of me. They called me words I didn't even know. Words that we would say are, put downs of homosexual people. I had no idea what they were talking about. But that's what it was. It was like I was being attacked, for being sensitive. And then I got jumped. And I remember how embarrassed and humiliated I was. I mean, to be sitting there, I didn't even get a good punch in, you know. I was on the ground and people were telling me, stay down, you're gonna get beat up. And I was like so humiliated, 9 years old. And I made a decision, which was not a good decision, that I would never, ever let that happen to me again. You understand? And I became this really tough guy. I joined a gang not too long after that. I became a cholo, gangster. I became hard. You know what I mean? I stopped being sensitive. I didn't want to play with nothing. I didn't want to think. I just wanted to. Somebody gave me a knife, stab somebody. Yeah, I'll stab him. Somebody gave me a gun, shoot somebody. Yeah, I'll shoot him. I got into fights all the time. When I was in juvenile hall, I remember I was put in there and I told the guys, who's the biggest guy in juvenile hall? This guy. I want to fight him. Why? Because if I fight him, at least nobody will mess with me. Even if he beats me up, they'll say, at least he's game. That's what you do. You know what I'm saying? You try to fight the biggest guy even if he beats you up. I lost more fights than I won, but I was always game. That's why that scared people. So, but that's not human. You know what I'm saying? That's a mutant human being. That's a kid that doesn't really know who they are. And I didn't know how to be that sensitive kid anymore. And I saw the danger of it. I saw me sitting in jail. I saw me losing all my friends. I saw me losing my family. At 15, they threw me out of the house. I saw me homeless down those streets of downtown LA. The same place where I got my award for Poet Laureate by Mayor Eric Garcetti was at Central Library downtown. It was the same place when I was homeless I used to go to as my refuge. That was where I used to go to on my own. And I remember librarians used to follow me thinking I was going to steal books, but I wanted to read these books. The books were like a refuge for me. I tell you why. Books didn't beat me up. Books never told me I wasn't going to amount to anything. Books never put me down. You know what I'm saying? I learned so much from books. Right now, this year, LA is honoring Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 as a big read. And I read Ray Bradbury. I read the Martian Chronicles and couldn't believe it, because you know why? The Martian Chronicles had Mexican characters in it. You know, there's Mexicans on Mars, thanks to Ray Bradbury. Like, who does that? It's amazing, you know. So I learned to read him. I learned to read all these I learned to read Malcolm X. The reason why Malcolm X was important, because the guy was a heroin addict. He was in the streets. He changed his life. He loved books. I go, hey, that's me. African American, he was just like me. You understand what I'm saying? He was living the life I was living. There was no Chicano books at the time, but I could read Malcolm X. I could read James Baldwin. I could read George Jackson, all those books that were coming out at the time. I was eating them up. Perry Thomas down these mean streets. That's like a Bible for me. I used to love reading these books. So it was important for me to have books and to do that. But what I need to put out to people that I had to learn to be fully human again. I had to learn to be sensitive again. You know what I'm saying? To get back to that part of me that was driven away. And we got to do that to our kids. We can't say the only way to be a man is this way. You understand? Tough guy, cold, detached. My dad was like that. He was emotionally detached, never said I love you. Never to the day he died, he couldn't say I love you. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be that man. I want to be a man that says to my kids, to my family, to my community, I care, I love, I feel totally connected. That's what's important. And to me, that's the one message that En Lakesh is about, that we're all connected whether we like it or not. Race is a big lie as far as I'm concerned. It's a big barrier that doesn't even matter. You know what I mean? Yes, we have different cultures. We know what we need in our world is a great diversity. I don't want homogenization. I don't want you all to look like me, act like me, and I don't want to act and look like you. We need great diversity and a unity of common issues and goals that mean the same to everybody. You understand? The unity should be, let's take care of everybody. Let's make sure everybody's taken care of. That should be what we unite around. And then we can have all the great diversity in the world. And there's a great statement that I use on my weblog, and I'm going to end with this because I want to hear from you. And I got it from a sign at the Varsity Arts Center downtown. I was walking and I saw this great thing. And I'll say it here because I totally believe in it. Unity in essential things, liberty in non-essential things, and compassion in all things. Beautiful, beautiful things, beautiful thoughts. And I want to share that with you, so maybe you think about that. Let's unite around the things we need to unite around, which is very essential. And let's have liberty in all these other things that we want to be liberty about. Your culture, how you speak, how you want to do your art, whatever it might be. And let's make sure that whatever we do, we have compassion in all our dealings, all our politics. Every economic decision has to have compassion running right through it. And I want to leave you with that. Thank you all for listening and giving me the time to be here. But yeah, I yeah.
As a retiree of Pasadena Unified School District, what are you doing in Pasadena and any other school districts to train, teach, share with the top-down administrators, principals, counselors? Because working at Pasadena High School for over 2 decades, it was very difficult with your book sometimes to really feel that the principal and administrators really understood what your book was about. They hadn't read it. They didn't really know. So what kinds of work are you doing in the public school system at the very top?
Yeah, so I don't work at that level very much. It's unfortunate. I would love to. I don't always get invited to work with the top level anybody. Even in the prison systems, I wish I could talk to some of the wardens and sit down with them, some of the people running these cell blocks, you know what I'm saying? But there's very little bit invitation for that. I do work with the kids, obviously, and I do a lot of work with them. They usually send me to the worst schools, and I can help change a lot of kids' lives. But I really feel that's important. I would love to talk to these people who are making decisions, making policy in the schools. And I do think that one of the problems I found with always running, yes, it's a very graphic book, I admit it. I couldn't write a book like this without it being graphic, you know what I'm saying? But here's the problem. A lot of our schools don't want reality in the classroom. They've idealized the world, and this is why kids have a hard time with schools. Now, maybe not all the schools, but there's so many schools that want to idealize history, they want to idealize literature, you know what I'm saying? They want to make it like it's not real. Be real. The reason why kids gravitate to my book, because there's reality. They know that reality, and that's the sad thing. How come they know about kids being shot and killed? How come they know about terrible sexual things that happen in our communities, even at homes? How do they know these things? We need to have that reality so we can address them and deal with it properly. So that's what I tell people, and that's my argument. You want reality? My book is one of those that should go in there. Malcolm X was not accepted in my school. I read him in the library. And I have to thank librarians because they're generally the last ones that keep having books there when nobody else will have them. So, but you couldn't find Malcolm X in my school, you know what I mean? And yet that was reality, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's what it is. We need more reality, and I'd be willing to talk to any administration, any teachers, anybody that's willing to have me talk about why that's important and how we can make it happen for every kid. Thank you. Yeah.
Good morning. I have to point out something you said. Also, your book, Mi Vida Loca, I shared that with someone at my job.
Yeah.
And it's required reading for the new policeman in Monterey Park.
Good.
The chief said that.
Good. That's great.
He grew up in Rosemead. And
Yeah.
also, what I wanted to share with everyone would appreciate, one time you were on Stevie Wonder's station. It's about 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
And a caller called up and started saying, we need to be tough on crime, and we need to,
Right.
and you said, it's tougher to care. And that woke me up in more ways than one. And it was like 5 in the morning. It became 5 in the afternoon the way you energized me. And I wanted to thank you for that.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you. I appreciate it. I would wish I could talk to police officers too. I wish I could talk, like I said, to other community members that people don't think that I would have something important to say. This is why if anybody has any influence with TV stations or radio stations, have pundits like me. We need more voices out there. I get tired of just so many little voices, and we need more different voices. So thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah.
Gentrification. It's a complex set of dynamics, and it gets simplified to white people moving into the barrio.
Yeah.
But it's much more complex than that, and we're not going to address the issues there if it gets simplified in that way. So talk about what you see and the economic dynamics there.
Well, if anybody knows San Gabriel Valley, and you're all in the San Gabriel Valley, you know that it isn't just white people, it's actually Asian. But I'm not talking about poor Asians. I'm talking about big money Asia. I'm talking about Hong Kong money. I'm talking about even mainland China now, Taiwan, Korea. I'm talking about big money. It has changed completely that part of the San Gabriel Valley that used to be my home. It's changed it. Now, is it all bad? I don't think it's all bad. But a part of it, it was a lot of displacement. People with money overwhelmed the people that didn't have money. In my little street, my dad bought a house for $12,000 in the early 1970s. Small little wood frame home. He benefited because nobody else in my neighborhood bought houses. They were all renters. My dad had this crazy idea of the American dream. He believed in it. That house sold in 1992 when he died for $280,000. He benefited, but very few people did. You understand? A lot of people were just pushed out. People that actually owned those homes, they were not the poor Mexican families that lived there. They made a lot of money. People were making money off money, and people were being pushed out. So I think that's the problem with gentrification. It isn't so much that it's a white thing. It could be anybody. There's Mexicans who are moving in part of the gentrification. You know what I'm saying? If they got money. It's really about money. You know what I'm trying to get at. Now, can it be good? Yes, it could be good if you take into account the community. My thing is we got to change these communities. They're poor. They need resources. They need influx of investment, but they need to be intact. And what happens is we don't keep our communities intact. As soon as people with money comes in, they throw everybody out. You did a lot of work in Boyle Heights with the housing projects, Pico Gardens and Aliso Village. Poor people's housing west of the Mississippi. They needed a lot of help. But what they did is got rid of Aliso Village. They just tore it all down. They put a gated community in there. Yeah, those poor people, they deserve to have a nice little community. They're mostly Korean, some up-and-coming Mexicans, maybe some white people. But they had to displace all these poor people. You see what I'm getting at? That's a problem. We have to find a way to live together and make sure that the people that don't have are taken care of instead of just throwing them out. Because look at those encampments. They didn't exist for nothing. You know what I'm getting at. So I think you're right. It is complicated. It's never just about white people. It's really not even white people. It's people with money. And if you happen to be another race and have money, that's usually what's going to do it. It just so happens that white people tend to be a lot of the people that are coming in with money. When the gay community was coming into Echo Park, I didn't see them as a problem. They came as artists. They came as people that are trying to work with the community. But as soon as possible, they got pushed out, as you know. And then people with money had no art were coming in. And Echo Park's a beautiful community, but I started noticing that the upper hills where they tore down some of those nice old homes and built these boxy, ugly-looking square homes. I go, what in the world? So you know what I'm saying. In other words, it is complicated, and it really is about people living together, making sure everybody's taken care of, or some people with money displacing other people, and that's always going to win out. Go to San Francisco. Oh, my God, what a beautiful city. Rich people's city. I'm telling you. It's really sad that working class people cannot survive in San Francisco anymore. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Or it's more of a comment, but I wanted to state that I really appreciate the fact that you used the word displacement.
Yeah.
Because I feel that the word homeless has a lot of myths and baggage around it.
Yeah.
And I'm also opposed to the labels that are used for people who are displaced.
Yeah.
Not that they don't apply, but those labels are across every socioeconomic path.
Right.
You have drug users in Malibu who are living in a beautiful mansion, and I don't find fault with that.
Sure.
I applied to work at one of the rehab centers in Malibu. So people like to put labels on people who are displaced versus dealing with real issues and failures within our society.
Yeah.
I use the term displaced due to political, domestic, and foreign policies.
Yeah.
And if we can spend $700 billion on war in 1 year alone, I mean, that's a testament. And when I see people visiting this country, I tell them, every person displaced that you see sitting on the street, sleeping on the street, that's the real United States.
Yeah.
Don't get caught up with what else you're seeing.
Yeah.
And I want to state the New York Times published an article the end of December, 1st of January online. And women who are over 50 who have held good jobs after 2007 are not getting rehired.
Yeah.
And even more so than men who are getting rehired.
Yeah.
So my question to people is, where do you think that community is going to go if they're not getting jobs? And so a lot of the real issues are not being discussed, and the dots are not being connected.
Yeah, you go.
And there's a lot of blaming on people who are most vulnerable, and I find that appalling. Oh, they're mentally ill.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Reagan allowed people to be placed on the street, and then communities never built those homes, community homes, for those individuals. So again, that's a failure of our society. And again, you can go through the list and just show how these labels don't apply. And what I have learned, the fraud that takes place and the distribution of funds that are not going to people who are truly in need is stunning. And so it's a racket. It's a racket that's allowed to exist.
Well, and I would say it's very true, and it's the nature of what we're dealing with is systematic. That's what people know, it's systemic. People need to know that it's not just people who can't handle it. I was around when we had great industry in the LA area, the most industrial place in the country, not Chicago. I lived in Chicago, great industry. Detroit, more in LA. And in the 80s, I saw it go away. By the way, I worked in that industry. I worked in a steel mill. I worked in a foundry. I worked in that foundry that they just closed, Exide. It was called National Lead then. It's been there since the 1920s. I worked in construction. I worked in all these things, and I saw those jobs leave. That's how I met Bruce Springsteen, because he's, LA became more of a rust belt than the Rust Belt. People were losing jobs. We lost 300 plants and factories by mid-1980s. And he came in 1984 to my steel mill and gave us money and support because we had the largest food pantry in the whole country, food bank in the whole country, and he gave us money. That's how I met him, and he's helped the Achuchas. In other words, what you're saying is systematic. People don't realize deindustrialization, the mental health institutions that were pushed out, all these things were going on at the same time, and now we're seeing the ramifications. We had the worst crisis ever since the Great Depression in the 1980s during Reagan administration. The answer that he gave was not the right one. And then now we've had a worse crisis in 2008, and people don't know that creates people in crisis and people who weren't supposed to be in crisis. So I agree with everything you're saying. I think we have to look at the systematic nature of what's going on.
Get a mic back there and then a mic here.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question, but I kind of need to give a little bit of background first. The cost of housing in LA is astronomical. I live in Studio City. My house is probably over $1 million for all I know.
Yeah.
And the neighborhood council is completely opposed to any additional development. On the other hand, I know that I could refurbish a freight container with plumbing and make it livable for about $20,000. If the supply of housing in LA was greater than the demand, then the cost of housing would be the cost of construction. Now, if LA had 500,000 additional units, then that would be the cost of housing, and I think that would put a huge dent in homelessness. On the other hand, people who see themselves as progressive and as ecologically minded are completely opposed to any kind of construction. I go to the neighborhood council, I'm super frustrated because I can't convince anybody to build anything anywhere. I'm not a construction guy, I'm a software guy. But how do we influence the progressive community to not oppose housing?
So what I would say is two things. One, there's actually a planned idea for LA that included displacement. So what she says is very true. This is no accident, by the way. People planned. I saw a plan for Watts. They wanted to lower the black community by 40%. That was a planned thing. Can you imagine? Nobody knew about this plan because it was hidden away. The people that were making policy knew about it. They wanted to get rid of the black community. They planned it. And sure enough, they did a lot of things to do that. A lot of what we're seeing is planned by somebody. So here's what I would say for progressives. Be part of a new plan. You know what I'm saying? We need to have new vision. I mean, it's not enough for me to just say I oppose homelessness. Come up with some proposals in which we can get housing in people's hands. You know what I'm saying? Housing that's affordable, that means everybody can have a decent home. And there's all kinds of ways to do it. There's innovative ways to make decent housing for everybody. So in one way, I agree with you. Let's not just pose what's the problem. Let's come up with a plan. Let's have a vision. Let's propose a better plan than the plan that other people are proposing, because that's why Echo Park got displaced. There was a plan. People knew what they were doing. There was a plan for a lot of these communities. And just so you know, my neighborhood, South San Gabriel, like I said, was the poorest neighborhood. The plan opened up that place where people can come in and buy these homes. They displaced a lot of families. They went to places like Rosemead, Monterey Park. They used to be white suburbs, but it actually now has changed completely. But they went to West Covina. West Covina was a white suburb, and they couldn't stand all these Mexicans coming over. Of course, nobody thought about what they got displaced on purpose, but they couldn't stand it. They started the first gang injunction. We have gang injunctions all over the state. There's 70 communities affected by 40 gang injunctions in LA alone. The first one was against my neighborhood in West Covina. They made a plan to even go against the Mexicans coming in. I have a gang injunction. The reason I mentioned gang injunction because, again, these are planned things. I'm in Sylmar with our beautiful bookstore, great bookstore. We have the second largest gang injunction in the state, almost 10 square miles. Gang injunctions hurt the community because now kids were being stopped who weren't in gangs. They were being stopped in the corner. If there were 2 or 3 were in the corner hanging out, they would stop them. They would get pictures of them. They would take pictures of their tattoos. Some of them were just skaters. Some of them just kids with nothing to do. They weren't gang members. They actually made the local gang bigger and more powerful because now the gang was recruiting everybody that the cops were already putting them in jail for. You know, I'll tell you one sad story. It's related to this because, again, these are planned things. When the gang injunction came in, there was a kid that used to come to Tia Chucha's when he was 12. His dad brought him over to help him out, a Mexican Salvadoran kid. He was a hip-hop head. He wasn't a gangster. He loved hip-hop, so we got him into hip-hop and everything. And then he kind of stopped coming. And then one day, he showed up with tattoos all over his face, tattoos everywhere. Go, what happened? He said he got picked up in the gang injunction. He was already 18, never got in trouble before. They put him in the county jail. 6 months in the county jail, all the prison gangs and everything, they told him, you got to be a shot caller now for this gang. They jumped him in the gang. He had to be a shot caller. He had to get all these tattoos. He had to call shots. He comes out after 6 months looking like a heavy-duty gangster. You know what I'm saying? We create these people. We create the world that creates them. It's like I wrote an article about Mara Salvatrucha in L.A. and in El Salvador. So these are monsters that we created. We created the environment that feeds into young people being lost, and then we create a world that makes them even stronger and bigger. Go to El Salvador. You want to know where all the cholos are? You don't see cholos in LA? They're in Guatemala, they're in Honduras, they're in Mexico. They're all over the place. They're in El Salvador because we create these monsters, and now we got them spread out. So only thing I would say, George, is it's the plan. Let's come out with a better plan. Let's come out with policy. Let's come out with real plans that include everybody. If we're going to be progressive, come out with a plan to counter these other plans because these other plans are going to hurt our community, not hope.
Do we have time for him to read us something? For what? For him to read us a poem?
You got time for one? I know you guys had questions,
Yes.
But we're going to finish. We got to finish. I guess it's 11 o'clock. So let me end with a poem. Does that sound good? And I'll be back there signing books. I'll talk to you more. And I'm going to end with one of my people sonnets. I decided to do these great sonnets in Shakespearean style. Believe it or not, I never read Shakespeare. I went to my first Shakespeare play at 45 years old at Ashland, Oregon, that great Shakespeare festival they have there. And I was totally amazed, and I was in tears. I didn't understand most of the play. It didn't matter. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And I was sad that I couldn't have had it when I was a kid. So I started reading Shakespeare, some of his plays. I started reading some of the sonnets, and I decided to do sonnets. So I'm going to share one with you, and I hope you like it. And thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Praise to shoes on a homeless winter night. Praise to mothers who nurture without men. Praise to the bottom in a drug-mad flight. Praise to the poet who shatters with a pen. Praise to vibrant children in a static world. Praise to dreamers and cash-only exchanges. Praise to the tattered flag of justice unfurled. Praise to our nation's depth, breadth, and ranges. Praise to a restoring earth with global warming. Praise to large spirits even in cages. Praise to the new alignments now forming. Praise to anger with eyes, not blind rages. There is much to praise if we are to last, the big within the small, and the small in the vast. Thank you all very much. Thank you, pretty people. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Luis, and thank you all. And for some of you, it's time to go to church. We'll see you next week.